Hello, today I want to go over a really fun activity that you can utilize with your alternately assessed students when you're working on the Science Essential Element 5, LS2-1, which is creating a model to show movement of matter through living things. And one way we can show that is by pollination and honeybee pollination. So I created a Jamboard. What I like about a Jamboard, especially for science experiments or activities, is that your students can participate in real time with you. That's something that often happens when you are working on science experiments. So I wanted to recreate that, and I like using a Jamboard for that reason. Of course, if you have other options that can have your students participate in real time, go for it. If you use a whiteboard, great, whatever works. I tend to utilize Jamboards, but whatever works so you get that interaction and that participation of your students works for me. So I'm going to show you, I found a little pollination video. It's just called Pollination Rock. You'll see. The kind of bees are just flying around, right? You can go into YouTube, you can find any sort of video that you might think would hook your students. There's a ton of options, music videos, any sort of little informational video, whatever works. If that's something that your students like, fantastic. But definitely utilize YouTube. There's so many options and choices for you. Right? So I often like to activate some prior knowledge, go into YouTube, kind of give them a way to start thinking about what it is we're going to be learning about. So I'm going to show you an activity that I have used in the classroom, and I'm going to first explain it in that way as if your students are going to be able to participate with you, right? So if you're able to talk with your parents and they're able to provide a snack for their student, their child, great, fantastic. But if not, that's totally fine. First, we're going to go through this as if your students are participating, and then I'm going to tell you how you can instead just model for your students so they'll still be able to go through the information and be able to answer the questions based on our activity. So here you'll see step 1, pretend you're a bee. Step 2, fly from flower to flower collecting pollen. So now this is really fun because you can have your students get up, move around, embed some of that movement into your activity, right? Get them up and moving, the blood flowing, and I love doing that for any lesson that I could possibly do. Our students, it's really hard for them to be sitting in front of a computer for too long. So get up, move around, buzz around, do it with your fingers, right? Maybe if they have to stay seated, you can just have them buzz around with their hands and make the motion that their hands are flying like little bumblebees, right? So they could buzz. It's just a really fun, interactive activity, right? So that step, absolutely everybody can participate in. Step 2, fly from flower to flower. So maybe you want to say, okay, sit in your seat. Now I want you to fly to the window. Now fly to the door. Now fly back to your seat, right? So you can have them fly from different positions and just get up and move around a little bit. So super fun. Now step 3 is where they're going to now collect as much dust as they can by eating whatever is provided in a bag. And that would be, again, if your parents can provide your student with a snack, great. They can now take some moments to sit down and eat a little bit. And maybe when they're eating, they're something like Cheetos or Doritos or maybe some Oreos or popcorn, something that would leave some sort of residue or film on their hands, right? Like when they're eating and they need to wipe off their hands because, you get some of that stuff on them, right? So you want to maybe ask some of your parents to provide a snack like that, or think of something that they typically eat that would provide that. Now, again, we'll go through how they don't have to do that. You can absolutely just model and show them. So let's say they did get it. They have all that residue on their hand. Now they're back at their seat, right? They're going to sit there and they're going to wipe off all that pollen that they just collected from that flower bag, right? And then they can use a paper towel, they can use a napkin, anything that's probably white to wipe it off so that they could see what they left behind. And then take a look. What do you guys notice on your paper towel? What do you notice on your napkin? What did you leave behind? Look at all that dust or pollen, right? So just like a bumblebee will go and eat from a flower and go back to another flower, they leave all that residue behind, just like what you left off on your napkin. And that is how bees pollinate from flower to flower, right? They spread those seeds. They spread a whole bunch of different seeds into different flowers so that all these flowers can grow. So that is how you can participate with your students and have them engage in that. However, like I said, if it's not something you want to ask your parents or they're not able to provide that, it's too much, not a problem. You do step 3 and 4 on your own and you show your students what's happening, right? So you're like, okay, We all buzzed around. We're all bees. Now everybody watch me be Miss Dawn, right? Miss Dawn's the bumblebee. And so now I'm going to collect as much dust as I can, right? I'm going to eat from this bag here, and then you can have your Cheetos, whatever, very vibrant colors. And look, take a look at my fingers, guys. What do you notice? What do you see? Yeah, they're all orange. What do you know? Look at that. And now I'm going to go fly back to my desk, and I'm going to wipe off all this dust and pollen that's on my fingers. And then you can hold up your napkin and show them and say, take a look at this, guys. What do you notice here? And they'll see all the orange residue. Maybe if it's chocolate, they'll see, the brown residue, whatever it is, right? And then you can show them, look, we just pollinated just like how honeybees pollinate. So again, you can have your students participate with you. Or if they can't participate in eating a snack, you can do steps 3 and 4 and they can tell you what to do, right? They could read it to you and say, Miss Dawn, okay, go collect as much dust as you can. Eat what's in the bag. Okay, now fly back and wipe it all off. So they can absolutely still engage with you. They can tell you what to do. They can watch what you're doing. You can ask them about what they're observing or what they might predict would happen next, right? So 2 different ways to do this activity, not required to have your students eat anything at all, but just something if your students already maybe have a snack throughout the day, you might want to embed this into that part. So now let's go through our worksheets. So here's for my early learner. As you can see, I color-coded. I modified the steps down, right? I broke them down to step 1, 2, and 3. And then I asked really, because this is primarily what we're focusing on, is pollination. So what happens after that one bee lands on a flower? We just showed it in our little activity. They fly to another flower and they drop off all that residue or that pollen into the second flower. So I left these boxes open so that your students can write in them, draw in them, or maybe even type in them, right? Whatever they're capable of doing. And then down here I talked about what we observed, right? What's the point of our lesson or our science experiment? We want to talk about our observations. So I gave them some prompts down here, some icons, and they can choose either one because they're both correct, right? They're just different things. And they can either circle them, they can write out their answer, type out their answer, or just verbalize their answer, right? So they can either say bees help flowers to grow or bees spread seeds, right? So 2 different ways to, give them some answers for their conclusions or their observations of the activity they just either watched or participated in. And now let's move through as we would differentiate for a higher level learner. So we'd move through and we'd ask them not only what happens after step 2, which they would have their answer still color-coded, but what happens after step 3, right? So from step 2, they land on a flower, they pick up all that pollen, the bees get all that pollen, and then after step 2, they fly to another flower. And then they drop all those seeds onto that flower. Now what happens after step 3 is now all these other flowers start to grow, right? We have all these different seeds in these other flowers and we're helping flowers to grow, we're spreading seeds, we're creating wildflowers in all different places, right? Bees can help spread flowers all over. So we talk about that, right? Now we're helping flowers to grow. We're spreading seeds so more flowers grow in more places. And then down here, instead of having the icons, I gave them a sentence starter. So what is their observations? And one thing they learned about pollination was, and then they can fill in whatever it is they think. Finally, your higher level learners, no color coding. I faded back some of that visual support. I still have my steps with my icons. They can type out their answer with their drawing. They could write out their answer in these boxes with their drawings. What happens after step 2? What happens after step 3? And then maybe you want them to write their conclusion sentence or type their conclusion sentence down here as well. So this is just a really fun pollination activity. Again, you can use with your students, have them participate, or maybe just have that movement component, right? Have them fly around, buzz around as bees. And then you would go into having them fill out their worksheets in different levels. They can all participate because within Jamboard you can have multiple slides duplicated and have them write their names and participate and share what they observed in this really fun activity or share what they observed you doing in the activity. So I hope you can use this and I hope you have fun with your students completing it.